Welcome back. You're watching HFO-TV.
So please join me in welcoming Rob Justus.
So I want to first give you a little bit of my bias and perspective. I've spent my life working with low-income people, homeless folks, and so I have that lens. Also, my focus is going to be really talking about City of Portland, Multnomah County, moving a little bit from the macro to the micro. Several years ago, when Dave Carbonneau and I started Home First Development, our 100% commitment was to build affordable housing. And we felt, that we could have, over the years, have developed a low-cost approach to do that. Not rocket science. What we build is garden-style apartments, wood frame walk-up, nothing revolutionary. Little did we know in that effort that 8 years later, the affordable housing industry and even local politicians would see us as the enemy. Coming from a perspective of doing this work for 25 years and watching locally, specifically City of Portland and Multnomah County, fail miserably at addressing homelessness in the affordable housing crisis. And watching not just ourselves, but others, people in this room, trying to offer solutions, try to be a part of the answer, not really being listened to. And part of that, is and directly relates that you have affordable housing industry, nonprofit developers that really believe that they're the answer. You have local government who believe they know best, and it's a problem. I want to share with you kind of some of my suggestions. My hope would be if I had city council sitting at this table, maybe some commissioners from Multnomah County. Here's my advice that I'd like to give to them. You talk a lot about the 0 to 30%, and we have to do something for the 0 to 30%. Well, what are we talking about? So people who are at 0 to 30% need a lot of services. Okay, what does that mean? As somebody who has worked with a lot of folks on the streets, what we need to do is really define how are we going to respond to the number of people that are mentally ill, chronically addicted, disabled, people that are living on our streets. And are we going to create facilities, permanent supportive housing, however you want to describe that? What are we doing for those people? And point to me a project, a development that is committed to that population, that we're actually targeting folks who aren't going to be working. What's interesting for me, as in doing this work for a long time, when I look at the chronic individuals that have been on the streets, are on the streets today, 10, 15 years ago, some of them are the same people. And a lot of them are folks who are struggling with these issues that are health-based. When you're looking at the issue of responding to homelessness, there's two broad categories. There's health and there's economics. And what is our strategy, both locally and on the state level? What are we doing, and what is the strategy? We're not having those conversations, and you don't hear anybody stepping up and saying, we're going to go build some housing specifically for the mentally ill. I believe that all public dollars that are being spent in what's left of the housing bond need to go towards that population, not a timber tower. I would say to I would say to Wheeler, stop at this building, this 60% of MFI housing. Use those public dollars to really address people that are outside and that are in desperate need of comprehensive services. I think the other thing that is troubling to me is, and I've said this before, is not only in what we're doing. I mean, we're trying to build affordable units, but you have an industry and advocates who have demonized not us, just us, but all of you. They have pointed to you and said, you're the problem. Which what they don't realize is you're their best hope. Because there's no way government on their own is going to fix this issue. They need the private sector. And so they need to be looking at, how do you become creative? How do you leverage, what you're doing? One of the things I feel like they need to leverage, and I'm not an economist, but I could be wrong, but I do believe at some point on the private sector, we're going to overbuild. We're going to have a lot more units. And you think of the number of projects that are in the works, the projects that aren't even built yet. But at some point on the private sector, we're going to overbuild. Government, if they were smart, would be thinking about, all right, let's start talking now how we take advantage of what could be an opportunity. One of the things that I would love to see happen, and I know there's folks here who have discussed this, is a statewide, state-funded, even locally funded voucher program. For those individuals whose their primary issue is economics. They're working, but maybe they're only working part-time. They're making minimum wage, but they need a place to live. If there was a fund or some type of resource, so when there's a new project whose units aren't filled, and we're starting to see double-digit vacancy rates at the higher end, that there's a fund, there's a gap funding there for individuals to help them move into that unit. How it's structured, I don't know. But all I know is, government's not going to build their way out of this issue. How do you find opportunities to leverage what you're doing? I really need to call out the affordable housing industry. And shame on them. They have taken their own self-interest and made that a priority. They work against me, they work against you. And at the same time, they have the arrogance to continue to develop projects at obscene dollar amounts. And to me, it's shameful. In the context of a crisis, if they put as much energy as they have towards this timber tower, towards how are we going to help and house the mentally ill, Portland would be a different place. But that's not where the energy is. And at the same time, they're working against all of us. They don't see us as an asset. They really believe that they need to control their power base, their funds. And in that, we're not solving anything. I think, and you heard this, earlier about trying to, how do we work together in the divisiveness? It's fascinating, but for me, on a personal level, that's very real in watching our local leaders function. A lot of way of what you see in Washington, D.C. is if you don't agree with me, then you're somehow the enemy, and we're going to go after you. And we see that in local politics all the time. And I want to give you an example. One of our issues in Portland is what I would describe as this liberal arrogance, that we know what's best. And I'm going to give you a little bit of contrast. So are doing some projects outside of Portland. We actually are working with the state, with Oregon Housing Community Services. They have some new funding, this LIFT funding, that they have rolled out. It is committed to work with in rural communities, with communities of color. And what I have found with the state is they recognize their big bureaucracy, but they are genuinely trying to work with us. And we're at the table and we're problem solving. And they want to get this money out the door. And they want to see housing units built. And they want to see them built in a cost-effective way. Very different dynamic than trying to deal with the Portland Housing Bureau in the city of Portland, who they know. The level of arrogance and self-righteousness that exists locally is staggering, especially when you cannot step out and walk downtown or step out your door in Portland and not see a homeless camp. But the contrast of a government at the state where they're, again, not necessarily easy to work with, but there's a sense that there's a humility there. That's not in Portland. And so what that leads me to, and what I believe we need, is new leadership locally. We have several people that are, up for re-election. Several of those people I think need to be replaced. But the question is, where's that leadership going to come from? We need groups like yours to be putting forward candidates. We need fiscally conservative-minded people to be running for public office. We need some diversity of thought on the city council at Multnomah County Commission. And please do not forget about Multnomah County. I think often when in the news and that, you hear a lot about the city, but all the homeless services and all those services all shifted over to Multnomah County. They're spending tens of thousands of dollars. We need to pay attention on who's running for county chair. We need to pay attention to who's running for county commission. I will also I'll share with you my bias. And again, my wife doesn't like when I name names, but, there are people who have had their chance that are on city council, that are on the Multnomah County Commission, who've had their chance to make a difference. So I really believe that we need to find somebody to replace Nick Fish. Nice guy, advocate, but he's been on city council a long time. And he is, for me, an apologist for the way the affordable housing industry functions. He is their defender. We need somebody to step up. I believe the same thing on the county side. We need somebody to challenge Deborah Kafori. We need somebody, because what's happening now, to go beyond this notion of, well, let's just build shelters. Which shelters are what? They're mats on the floor most of the time. I genuinely feel like, and I'm not a politician. What I care about is low income and poor people. And I care about those people because of my personal faith, and I feel called to do this. But there's a part of me that genuinely feels like we have to take back our city. We have to be about bringing in new leadership. Leadership that is fiscally minded, that does the math, that doesn't make excuses for an industry that has lost its way. using excuses like, well, it's $500,000 a door for the timber towers, but only $100,000 of that is really from the city. Okay, well, yeah, it's from other pots of tax dollars from the feds. I mean, if you look at the cost of that building, most of that money is our taxes. So, and I just realized I'm over my 10 minutes. So, I implore you to push back, ask questions, and let's find some new leadership in Portland and Multnomah County so we can actually get about the business of not only taking back our city, but housing low-income people and giving people who really suffer from mental illness, disabilities, a place to live. Thank you.
Our entire office specializes in multifamily real estate, making HFO the largest multifamily brokerage in the Pacific Northwest. Your success is our passion. Build your legacy with HFO. Call 503-241-5541 or visit our website at hfore.com for more information.